Hello, Ned.
Hi.
I know you that you are started this Facebook page about NDEs. So you've been studying this subject, this phenomena for a while.
Main reason I got into these experiences is basically a search for answers. At one point in my life, I thought about suicide. I thought, what's the point? Because I was a scientist and I learned about the common belief about atheism and materialism that only physical matter exists, including our brain. So when there's no activity in the brain, that there isn't anything at all. And so I was searching for answers and for a reason to live, and then I came across the near death experiences, I think on YouTube and elsewhere. I found Dr. Raymond Moody's book, A Life After Life, which he published in 75, and I read that as well. And it was the first eye opener for me. I was in high school and I didn't have any really trusted friends. Like I had some, but even that, like I felt like I wasn't being fully honored about, like, because I sometimes speak slowly. People had opinions of me or judge me, and I felt like all alone. And also because I didn't have, like, so even at school I had a hard time, and school felt like a prison that I had to go there, even though I didn't have any hopes or dreams of the future. I didn't see a reason. And at home, my family life was also unhappy, and I didn't have any any person who I felt close enough who really like understood everything, and I felt like I could actually just exhale and relax. Like I felt just alone the whole time. And
Well, you're not alone here. You said I felt alone, but you're not alone because a lot of children feel like that when they don't have a. Yeah, I made a short film a while ago. It's called Home about a kid who has been also had a really screwed up childhood, and he was always looking going outside and looking at the sky, and he just wanted to go home. He was kind of earning for his real home.
oh wow, yeah, because I can relate. And I think that also, even though I don't have any memories of it, I've been told by multiple independent people without me asking, that my energy feels like a person who's had a near death experience. And then even experiencers have told me that based on intuition. And so it kind of explains some of my childhood. And I think I, it happened when I was really, really young as an infant. And so the whole time as a toddler, in preschool, in school, I was always looking at like the trees or the nature. And so the kids playing on the playground, I sometimes played with them, but a lot of times I felt like just on my own, and I was interested in the earth. I was interested in the stars and space, science and all of that. But also on top of that, I was extremely shy, and so I kept everything inside. In terms of what I have learned and why I started the Facebook group, I started that in 2013, and it was very spontaneous. I didn't have a huge plan around it. I felt like on the internet we see articles or videos about experiencers, and I wanted to just record them and have a place to organize them. And over the years, people will join out of curiosity because their friends will see it and relatives will see it. I created the group to be public intentionally because I wanted the awareness to get out there in the world. There are many private or closed NDE groups which I'm a part of and have their own purpose, but the purpose of this one is to actually help the world awaken a little more.
So you studied a lot of in the years, and they all said that they have a purpose here. This is why they came back. So what is the main purpose here for all these people?
It's learning to apply what our souls know or are striving for, which include things like unconditional love, and also self-love when we are in a challenging situation where it's easy to feel overpowered. Yeah, overall, I like how Vinny explains it. How Earth is more like a classroom rather than a courtroom. And so it's almost like over here we're doing experiments and we're learning. We're taking our exams, and if we have mistakes, we can always go back and learn more. And so it's that whole process of becoming our best selves over here on Earth.
Becoming our best selves. But how do we know what is our best selves?
That's a a good question. Based on NDEs, the answer is always about love, and so like they talk about how a person who achieves a lot in a business or who earns a lot of money or influence or fame, it isn't really about that. Um, really, what accounts as growth or value is the times where we express in our choices, in our words and actions to others and ourselves love. And love, it can mean also joy or happiness. Like a surfer who loves the ocean is expressing that. It isn't about achieving or always having to accomplish something. It's about following our inner voice or a feeling and honoring that.
It's always the journey, it's not the destination. So basically, just enjoy what you're doing, that's your journey, and this is your way to awakening.
Yeah, and I want to add that sometimes it can be hard because for a lot of people who grow up who have a family who puts expectations on them, like you have to earn, straight A's and then end up at this university and become a doctor or something. And oftentimes the person, their soul isn't really as interested in that. And so a lot of us have these conflicts over time, and so part of that whole journey is realizing, like inside, I feel this other way, and so um, there's an element of growth in letting go of that fear of the expectations of others and even ourselves.
So the studying of the NDE phenomena gave you a reason to leave?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Because it reminded me that I had a purpose myself, even when I felt like no one else reflected that or showed me a lot of love as a child, which I've since have learned has a big impact. If you have a child and they feel not loved, it really impacts them. And so I've been recovering from all of that. But your question was about.
Did the studying of NDE phenomena changed your own perspective and gave you a reason to leave? Because you said you were suicidal.
Yes, because I also one of the things that I found extremely helpful was reading about or listening to experiencers who had extremely traumatic lifetimes. People who were killed or had their experience because of an accident or even a attempted murder, and with abusers and everything. And in their experience, they were shown that even all that had a purpose, even all the pain and suffering had a purpose, and that they still had more to do on earth. So in a way, even though it didn't have as dramatic of a situation as like a murder, I still can relate to having a life that completely seemed like messed up or a waste or worthless, which is how I felt about it. That even that, well, okay, I know that I'm here. I know that I can at least try, and that our actions and what we do here actually do matter. Because as an atheist or someone who felt like there wasn't a purpose, I felt like it doesn't matter what I or anyone does, because there are no ultimate consequences in a bad way or a good way. And NDEs, they basically show us that there are consequences, and it does matter how we operate and act here on Earth.
Okay, in your opinion, what is the purpose of a person who goes to prison for a long time? What is his purpose in life? Sometimes they go for life, for all the rest of their days.
That's a really interesting question, and I think so. A person who goes to prison, say that it was an actual crime, not a mistaken issue with that. But so a person in prison, it's to give them a time and a place
To
to
reform.
reflect on everything,
Yeah.
and yeah, reflect, reform, and possibly based on their free will choices to change and improve and become better than when they entered.
So, what is your observation? You've been studying a lot of NDErs. It's not the one who is older, it's wiser. Is that right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that reminds me about the children experiencers who often will come back and all of a sudden act like an adult or act like a very wise. And it definitely makes me reflect on how, we all have our souls. We have our biological age, and we have perhaps like our soul age. And I put that number in quotes because, they also say that our souls are timeless. But what I've heard from experiencers is that even if our souls are timeless and infinite, we all have our choices, and based on our choices, we are at different levels of growth or uh, understanding. And so your question about the age, you can have a old or experienced soul at a younger physical age. You can have an older person who based on their actions and choices, it reflects a less mature soul.
So, how do you recognize a more mature soul and less mature soul?
The more mature soul will often be a lot more I can't say the word. It is
It'll be less egotistical, maybe. The ego is going to be smaller.
a sort of, or actually, the ego is more aligned with words and actions, which are constructive and positive and even joyful towards themselves and others. And so, a good analogy about soul maturity is how much are their actions and words either harming other people or themselves, or ultimately growing and making better over time.
Can you give me a couple of NDE stories? You study a lot of them, just a couple stayed with you and you're very impressed and you'd like to share.
Yeah, one that comes to mind here is Nancy Rhines. She used to be an atheist herself, and she was a geologist, a scientist, and she was riding her bicycle near Boulder, Colorado, some years back, and a texting driver crashed into her. And in her experience, she, one, was completely surprised that she woke up in such a beautiful place, because as an atheist, she thought this was not existing. And she talks about how it was so beautiful, it made her cry out of joy because of the whole surprise of it, and the whole, I would say, beautiful surprise of it. And that there was a guide with her there who showed her a lot of interesting aspects about life, not just here on Earth, but also in other planets, other places, and basically also told her that all of this was in preparation for her to come back to Earth and then share it and teach others. And at the time, she argued about it because she was so happy over there that she didn't want to return, but also she thought about, like, it wasn't in her personality to teach, spiritual things to others. And so this would all be like a new journey for her and kind of out of her comfort zone. But when the time came, she basically was sent back. Her body healed, and I think it surprised her doctors, as is common. She has went on to write multiple books about what happened, which I have, and which I find extremely inspiring. Her case, I guess, is fairly common in terms of the whole themes of uh, surprise, amazement, and then learning things, and then returning back and having more of a purpose. And I can also share about David Bennett, because his experience is so fascinating because it happened in the ocean in a storm. He was also an engineer. He was not religious or spiritual at the time. I think he was in his early 20s when he had it, and he drowned in the ocean at nighttime in a storm. And he met a very loving and intelligent soul family, and he felt closer to them than anyone on earth. And he felt such compassion, empathy, and love from them. And he was also told that he would have to return to Earth, which he, if I remember correctly, he argued about as well. And he was firmly told by some higher power, whether a guide or an angel or God even, but just, repeated, you have a purpose, you have a purpose, you have a purpose. And he was sent back, and his body miraculously recovered. I guess it was caught on a a line or a rope in the ocean, and so many interesting things about NDEs. Like he said, when he woke up for I think weeks or months afterwards, he could see the auras around all the plants and palm trees. And this was in Southern California, but that's all interesting too. But also the fact that he had a purpose, and he wrote a book as well called Voyage of Purpose, which I recommend, because for anyone who feels lost on Earth at times, as we all do, reading these experiences can be healing and kind of reminding about something bigger than ourselves that we're all a part of here on Earth.
His story reminded me of the movie I watched, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago with Robert Redford. It's only one actor. The whole movie is, basic length of the movie, an hour and a half. It's only one actor, Robert Redford, playing the lead part. And he's on the boat in the middle of the ocean somewhere. And suddenly he began drawing. And then he already sinking. And we see the top of the ocean, and it's a blue light. The sun is coming. And he's already sinking, going down. And suddenly the hand comes from that ray of light from the ocean. Just a hand comes, picks him up, and brings him back. This sounds like an NDE to me, NDE movie.
Um, which movie was that? I don't know
It's
if I
called
saw it.
it's called All Is Lost. All is lost.
Wow.
Just one actor on the boat, and he keeps your attention focused for an hour and a half. You can't take your eyes away because he lives this role. He doesn't play. He is there. He is the person over there on the boat. You mentioned Soul Family for David Bennett. When he was on the other side, he met his soul family. Can you describe that?
Yeah, and I'll share that he's not the only one. By far, it's a common thing, and when he describes it, I think he describes them as light beings. And so it's like if you're looking at a orb of light, like a miniature sun, um, and it can often take on the shapes of a person, or it's like a body, but it's more. It's like it can evolve, all based on intelligence. But in terms of the quality of the beings or people in the family, like he talks about how I think he remembered them from timeless,
He
from other
recognized
places.
recognized them. Yeah.
And he said he felt so resonant um, with them, as if they understood him more than anyone, that even his biological family on Earth. And he also talks about something interesting in that, like, our soul family is not restricted to a certain type of ethnicity or a certain country, because he said that he saw that he had one of the family members was actually not present, because at the time he was also incarnated in a human body at the time in Kuwait, you know, uh, um, which is interesting because David is not Middle Eastern.
Okay, so you want to say that when you were a kid, you were not happy with your childhood. You didn't feel like your family was your soul family.
Right. Or the people who would understand me most are probably somewhere else. Because ever since I attended my first IANS conference in Scottsdale, Arizona in 2012, and I started meeting experiencers, that actually feels like family. And I think it's also just because when people have their experiences, like you said about they become more authentic, and it does open up their hearts more, and so they don't have the common guard or uh, defenses that people in the general public are more skeptical or are more like guarded. And experiencers often have their intuition opened up, and so they can automatically know more about you even without having a conversation, which is so interesting and cool.
So you think they see the aura when they just see you, encounter you, they see the aura around you? What, how do they know about you so fast?
Well, yeah, I mean, several experiencers have talked about things like that, whether auras or even feeling the emotions, or sometimes I think it's called a cognizance of just a knowing.
You know, you're talking about David Bennett. When he came back from his NDE, he saw the plants and the trees, and he saw the energy of these plants. It reminds me of the movie Avatar, the first one. You remember? Back in 2009, all these plants are glowing at night. That was so beautifully done, plants are alive.
Trisha Barker, have you? She talks about in her experience was actually told and encouraged two main things. The first one is be more like a child, because oftentimes as adults on Earth, how much depression is out there, it's anxiety, and people are so they hold themselves under high pressure, and they're always unhappy. And so, in her experience, she was encouraged be like a child, and also tell them to go to nature. And like you said, and I think the more I feel it as well, the more I've seen other people. It's like when we're outside, when we're in a forest or the hills, without all of the urban drama and trauma with the ambulances and sirens going on. Like when you're in the nature, your body and your soul can like exhale, and it is more like you said in Avatar, like everything has the energy and it kind of supports each other.
Okay, what other memorable NDEs have you heard about, if you can share that?
Well, here's something. People will often ask about what's going to happen in the future, or if they are religious, they might ask about the end times or the apocalypse and these kind of topics. One thing that you know you can understand the more experiences you look at and see is that people are sometimes shown things in the future, and it's best to take them with a grain of salt, only because even if they are true, it's a matter of interpreting them correctly. Everyone has their own perception of things and their own filter. So far, very few, if any, experiencers have talked about, by a certain date, the end of the world will happen. I haven't heard any serious NDE say something like that. Like they all talk about how we are here to evolve and be our best selves, including, oh, well, I'll also add, a lot of them will talk about other lifetimes and reincarnation. And if you think about it in a way of, if I make a mess on Earth, either physically, like I pollute the water, or even just emotionally, and I hurt people, there are consequences which exist outside of just this a single lifetime. And so it does matter to not pollute as much as we can, or to hurt others as much as we can, because we are responsible for our actions. And I say that because I think there is some thinking now among both people who might have an atheistic perspective or materialistic perspective, in that, well, because there are no consequences, it doesn't matter how we treat the earth or each other, or among certain religious groups, the idea of a savior who will soon swoop in and just clean everything up for us, absolving us of any of our own responsibility. And those are
What they
a
call
big,
rapture. When
yeah,
the rapture is going to come, every believer is going to go to heaven.
yeah, and so like in terms of the experiencers out there, I haven't heard of any serious one who doesn't have a religious affiliation, because there are some out there on YouTube. They never talk about like a rapture, or like of like I'm wanting people to convert into any religion. And they also, like, I think also it's important to say this now, because of what's happening in the U.S. and other countries too, about laws affecting people, and laws which will ultimately hurt people. And a lot of these laws are coming from religious groups who are trying to assert their influence onto governments. I say this because, not to get political, but in order to bring this back to the message of NDEs, hundreds and thousands of them, they all talk about love for everyone. And so if there are people who are different from us, or who who just we feel uh, not a resonance with, it's okay. And I say this as a message to everyone. Like, if a person listens to this and perhaps is in a church, or is being taught that their church's way is the only way, people who die and return often become free of that, and they return to the heart. We're all equal.
Well, basically, the NDEs are not promoting fear; they are promoting love.
Right.
Do NDEs go to church?
Some do. Sometimes, and I sometimes have been in churches and in temples, and actually Patricia and some others, I think, have talked about how they see religion differently. It's a more inclusive, and so, like, different areas of the world, or different countries, will have their own religions or churches. So it's more of a perspective of, oh, if I'm here, I will attend this a temple because I'm interested in, and because of that energy that everyone on earth in their own way is trying to honor. And so, yeah, it's a very individual answer. And I can relate, because in some churches it does have a beautiful energy, or just the building, or the plants inside it, and how it all looks. It has an energy.
Yeah, I was in LA and somebody invited me. Say, hey, do you want to go to? It's called
Adventist.
Seven Religion Park. They called it. I said, yeah, sure, let's go because it was a weekend. Let's go check it out. And we entered this place in Pacific Palisades. It's a self-realization fellowship.
I've been there.
You've been there? How beautiful is that? I entered, Ned, and I felt like I'm lifted off the ground. The energy was so amazing. I was wondering, I was saying, oh my God, this is beautiful here. It's not only the visuals, but the energy. And then you have all this, it's a church of all religions. So you've been there to that place.
That one has a pond in there.
That pond has swans and turtles and fish and you go on the grounds. There are different kind of plants from all around the world, and the big statue of Christ, and it's a little like a waterfall coming, beautiful coming water from his statue. It's an amazing location, and that was one of my favorite places when I was in Los Angeles, to go and just get in touch with spirit and kind of align my vibration back to myself. Well, studying all these NDE stories, do you have any memorable stories of reincarnation?
Reincarnation. Well, one case that's interesting is Anita Morjani. She talks about how, in her experience, she actually saw and remembered like a previous lifetime where her and her brother were also together, just as in her current lifetime. And what occurred, I think it was like in the 1800s. I just remember that as a good evidence of like a lot of people do remember other lifetimes in their NDEs, even if they never believed in reincarnation, or if they were very religious and their religion was taught that it doesn't happen. When people have these experiences, they do, and it's isn't like a concept of like a person will be born into like an animal or like a ant or something if they misbehave. It isn't about those kinds of things. It's more about like on a beautiful level in terms of our soul adventure and journey. It's like, oh, I yeah, it's remembering other times that we have been with people who are in our lives now, which I think are also part of the soul family we were talking about. And there's also the case of the a boy who remembered he was a pilot in World War II. He was an American pilot, and this was in the Pacific Ocean fighting against Japan. And I remember his plane crashed, and as a boy, he remembered all of that. That isn't from an NDE exactly, but it's a good a case, and I think there's been a lot of research about it.
I read about kids that 3, 4 years old kids who remember, for example, they remember being on the Titanic. Some of them remember to being on 9/11. Some kids, they are born in a family and then they suddenly start to recognize everything. They say, this was here, this was here. And people recognize it. They say, wow, how he can know because he was not born yet. For their consciousness becomes polluted by all these worries and fear and all this propaganda on this earth, they are still clean and they can remember all that. Well, do you have something to share with my viewers? With some, you have a book or you have a course or something so people can find out more about you?
You can find me on Facebook if you enter in the near death experiences group. And so the URL is basically facebook.com/groups/return from death. I am working on my first book. I don't know when it will be ready because I'm figuring out what I'm actually saying in it, but I think it will be like in large part an autobiography, but also my search for answers and many of what I've shared here.
Thank you for watching About Freedom Show. I really appreciate you. Click on one of the videos below and don't forget to subscribe.